So no doubt by now you would have seen footage and a ton of reviews around this guy. This is the HoverAir Pro Max, a flying camera, aka a drone that's been taking the internet by storm and giving DJI a run for its money. In this video, I want to talk about if it's any good for cycling, how I've been using it the past couple of weeks, and whether you should get one. Full disclosure, they did send this into the channel for review, but all the thoughts are my own. So first off, what is this? This is a very lightweight and packable drone. On our scales, it weighs in at 194 grams, so way below that 250 gram limit where you have to register most drones. But there is a bit of a catch with this, and I'll get into it a little bit later. Just for some background, I'm a longtime drone user. I've flown lots of DJI drones. I had a pilot's license when I was in the States and used it for production work as well as this kind of YouTube-y stuff. So I have a fair amount of experience with drones. And not to say I don't actually like flying them, but this has actually changed my mind. You know, the first obvious thing is that this thing is super light and portable, way easier to dig out of a bike bag or even put it in a stem bag than other drones out there. Another big plus is the quick fold. Unlike some DJI drones where you have to go arm by arm, it literally just folds in half. Also, the propeller blades are nicely protected in this plastic material. When you, in the box, they actually give you a little piece of this and dare you to tear it. This stuff is remarkably light plastic and super robust. I've not crashed it personally, but there's a ton of footage of people running this into trees in the woods and still survive. The first thing is this has a lot of modes, and of all the modes, I probably only use 3 of them. One is the follow mode, one is the cycling mode, a dolly mode, which puts the camera in front of you and it tries to fly backwards and track you, and the other is a side tracking shot, which kind of works. Again, more into that a little bit later. My first big hope with this drone was to use it to capture, some third-person riding footage. I don't always have Laura with me on a bike to film, so I was hoping that this would help out. And for the most part, it succeeded in those, but it does have its limitations. First off, let's talk about the modes. Of those 4 modes, amongst the other modes that it has, the ones that are the most reliable are the cycling mode and the follow mode. And of those 2, I use the follow mode more often. And the main reason for that is with the follow mode, you can access this thing called Copilot if you've got one of their beacons or use the phone, and you can adjust the distance and the height of the drone from you as you ride, and it tries to maintain that distance. With the cycling mode, you don't really have access to Copilot, or at least I don't think you do. And what I found with the experience is usually when I set this, I set it as far as possible and as high as possible, and it's still fairly low and close. So Copilot really allows you to kind of fine tune that distance so you can get a really wide shot. Otherwise, it's far and high is more of like a medium shot and less of a shot to give you a sense of space. The follow mode and the cycling mode are also the most reliable, and it does a really amazing job even at speeds. I'm no speed demon, but we'll get 15 to 20 miles per hour, and this tracks no problem. If you want a chase shot of a camera riding behind you, then this does an amazing job. The complications is in the other modes that I was hoping to use this in, primarily the dolly mode where this flies in front of you, flying backwards, getting a front-facing view, and also it flying to the side. So first off, in the dolly mode, it's kind of this weird dance where it anticipates where you're gonna go and reacts. This is a little bit unnerving because sometimes there can be an obstacle there. I'm never quite sure if it's gonna see it or if it's just gonna like run into it. It can also be strangely reactive at times. I feel like it doesn't do a good job at predicting a good path to keep you centered. And that leads me to the sidetrack mode, which has similar issues. It's kind of difficult to get a full-on profile. Again, this is on the bike. I feel like if you're just walking or running even, but with bicycle speeds, you get kind of more of a 3/4 mode. Sometimes it's 3/4 to the front, sometimes it's 3/4 to the back. And then once you outpace it, it just turns into follow mode. I've had very limited success getting a good sidetracking shot. Part of that is, finding a good environment where it's possible, where there's no obstacles for this to run into on the side, because again, this has no side obstacle avoidance. And again, there's also that dance of, moving closer and and further away from it, and it tracks you this way as well. I find myself managing it a little bit more than I would like in this side tracking mode. And I've gotten very few usable shots, at least for me. All that to say, I think the best mode it has, again, are the cycling modes and the following modes, and the rest are kind of just okay. Maybe they can be improved in the future. There are certainly things that you can do to kind of improve your chances for getting better shots. One of that is using the beacon. I would say if you're considering getting this, the beacon is almost a must buy. It does come with a mount so you can stick it on your handlebar. And why the beacon is so important is because you can fine tune the distance. Again, like I said, when you set it to high and far, it's actually not that high and far. So with the beacon, you can use the tiny little remote here to get it further, a little bit higher, to get that more expansive view, and also give it an easier time to track you when you're doing a dolly shot or a side tracking shot. I think this is absolutely essential. It's also essential for a couple of other reasons. One, it's just nice to monitor your footage as you're riding. Another is if, let's say, you're filming and all of a sudden there's traffic or another cyclist coming in your vicinity, you can quickly adjust the height so it's not a danger to anyone. Another reason this is useful, and I don't know if this is just me, but supposedly to call the drone back, you just kind of cross your hands above your head or over your chest and it'll fly towards you. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's because I have light colored gloves and it confuses it, but I've had a really poor success rate with recalling the drone. And many times I've had to just like manually fly it back to me using the beacon. And this is kind of a comedy of errors, especially when you've got it in a dolly mode or a side tracking mode, because as I would walk to it, it would fly further back and I couldn't get it to come to me unless I forced it to fly back using the beacon. So I think from just like a pure safety perspective, to abort the flight, to get it out of the way very quickly, the beacon is essential. I will say the beacon is a little bit of a misnomer. When I hear beacon, I think this is somehow locked to this signal, but this is really just more of like an RC controller. I had an instance where I had this on and was flying into the sun, and because of the flare, it lost like visual ID and just kind of just hovered there in the air. If it were a true beacon constantly communicating about where this is located, then to my mind, it wouldn't have lost me in the sun, would have continued falling. But it was still using a visual ID. So think of this more as a kind of mini RC controller rather than a true beacon in the traditional sense. I know it sounds like I'm being overly negative, but this truly is a wonder. I've hated flying drones in the past just because, dealing with a controller, especially when you're riding a bike, is a pain. But this in the follow mode is truly magical. Like I can just ride a couple minutes, monitor the footage on the beacon without having to constantly worry about that. This is the first drone I've been able to do that with. So for those quick and dirty, follow shots on like an empty trail or empty gravel road, then I think this is excellent. Notice the operative word, empty. One thing I don't think that gets mentioned in other videos is, and this might be because I did the whole like flight school in the US to get a license, is that this can kind of lull you into a sense of security, but you should honestly treat it just like any other drone, even though it's small, potentially less collateral damage. But I would urge you to be careful with this. I personally wouldn't feel safe running this on a paved road that's open to traffic, or using it on a heavily used trail with lots of foot traffic, or even some of the gravel roads close to town here, because I know I might encounter cyclists just bombing down the hill. For me, for my comfort level, I'd prefer to use this where it's fairly remote and the likelihood of interacting with some other person, some other cyclist, some other vehicle is very, very low. I don't think that gets mentioned enough. I feel like because of its diminutive size and it's fairly intelligent in the follow mode, that you can get lulled into a sense of security. But maybe it's because I'm paranoid. I do think twice, thrice, make sure I'm in an okay airspace before taking this out to fly. I guess that dovetails into other potential cons. This does fly under the 250-gram weight limit, so theoretically you can fly this without having to register it or get a license in the United States. In Europe, that would be the case, but because it does have a camera, the rules are a little bit different, and you do have to license it and do those other things. I feel like that's the big hiccup with this that no one talks about. If you want to be legal with this and a good citizen and a responsible operator or pilot, there are some legal things that you should look into before operating this drone, or just be supremely careful. For me, I try not to be a nuisance or try not to put this up where there's any kind of risk of danger of injuring someone or something. And I feel like generally that should be good practice. Overall, I think it's an amazing bit of technology, but I think you should kind of temper some expectations. Know that you're going to get a pretty decent follow shot going behind you, but if you want something filming you from the front at speed with lots of obstacles, this has its limitations, and especially in the sidetrack mode. Maybe that can be fixed with a firmware upgrade or some other like AI thing. But as of now, I rarely fly it in the sidetrack mode, which is a bit of a bummer because that's the shot that I wanted the most. I feel like with a follow shot, I can usually give Laura an action camera or a 360 camera on a stick and get a similar shot. But a profile shot while riding, that would have been the money. And this will do it kind of in limited circumstances when it's clear and you can position it correctly and it doesn't, drag back and try to go into follow mode. In terms of battery life, for a drone this small and the battery this size, it's not great, but you shouldn't be flying it all the time on a ride anyways, in my opinion. I feel like this is good to use for 3 to 4 shots, where each shot is maybe like 2 to 3 minutes long. Enough to get some coverage, but not so much where, you're getting, a full flight out of it. In terms of other accessories to consider, this hard case, which also acts as a charging case, is pretty awesome. It gives a Hover Air some solid protection. Again, this has a built-in battery, so you should take, the typical precautions. Probably not put this in checked luggage, all those good things. But you can see when you put the drone in here, it gives you a battery status of the case itself, as well as the status of the drone as it's charging. I think between this and the beacon and, an extra battery, those are like the essential things you should get. Absolutely impressed with this, how light and relatively easy it is to use. But at the end of the day, it is a drone and you should, take precautions. Just be a responsible user. Is it absolutely perfect? No, it does feel like magic when it works. I do wish, however, that they kind of refine how it follows in the sidetrack mode, make that a little bit more robust. But what do you guys think? Is this something you'd want to add in your kit? Let me know in the comments below. Occasionally, I like to review, bike-related tech. I was a photographer in the former life, so I love nerding out on this stuff. Expect to see some footage from this camera cut into future bike reviews. And that's it for today. As always, keep the supple side down.